Hey you, welcome to Sacrilegious Discourse.
I'm husband.
I'm wife.
And together we're reading the Bible.
Starting with Genesis and eventually ending with Revelations, we're working through every book and offering our atheist 2 cents.
Or shekels.
Yeah, those. We're asking questions and pointing out all the nonsense.
We aren't academics or scholars.
Nope. In fact, when it comes to religion, we really don't know anything at all.
What we've learned so far is that God's a dick.
Oh, he really is, isn't he? If you're interested in how we reached this startling conclusion, maybe start from episode 1.
Otherwise, jump in anywhere. It's all good.
Yep.
Hey wife, we just got a new sponsor. It's Anchor. They must think we're doing something right because they picked us back up.
That's amazing. Want to hear something even more amazing?
Yeah?
I actually know what they are.
You are full of shit. I'm calling your bluff. Tell me about Anchor.
Okay, so Anchor by Spotify is the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place.
I'm actually surprised you knew that, but did you also know that Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer?
Yes, because I see you do that on your phone all the time and it looks pretty simple.
It really is, and when hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
But I use CastBox.
Yeah, darling, I know you like CastBox. It gets distributed there too, and lots of other platforms as well.
And how much are we paying for this awesome service?
Absolutely nothing.
Coolio! So then we should tell people to download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started?
Yep, do it now.
Hey, husband.
Hey, wife.
Are you ready for a Q&A?
No.
Let's do a Q&A anyway.
Okay.
Do you know what we're Q&Ing?
Leviticus Chapter 25, which was a bunch of fucking bullshit about slavery and but something else.
Jubilee.
Yeah, that.
And remember...
But the slavery was the bad part.
The slavery was the bad part. I mean, it's all bad. But remember, I tried to hum the X-Files...
Shittily.
Not the X-Files, the X-Men cartoon. X-Files, X-Men, whatever.
It's all the same thing.
Yeah. X. So, yeah, we're going to talk about the Jubilee and slavery in our Q&A today.
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Okay, can you try not to cough all the way through it?
No.
God damn it.
Hey, wife.
Yes, husband.
Did you know that we are now on Patreon?
Yes, because you told me, but also, no, tell me more.
So we're on Patreon now.
Are we?
We are, and our supporters can go there and support us, and we have multiple levels all the way up to You Killed God.
That sounds really drastic and escalated quickly-ish.
Well, no, there's multiple levels before there, so it escalates on a sliding scale of, cheap to not cheap. Oh. But, we can definitely use any amount, so, any support is always appreciated.
So, what exactly is Patreon?
It's a place where you can show your support for our podcast. And
just our podcast?
Any podcast or any performer. But, we're the ones that, you're listening to right now. So maybe you should, support us. That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. But we love you anyway.
So all you got to do is go to Patreon, look up Sacrilegious Discourse. It's actually patreon.com/sacrilegious discourse is our actual main page there. So head on over and send us some love.
Yeah.
Hey!
So now we're going to do what I said we're going to do.
That's awesome. I love it when we do what you say you're going to do.
Because I'm the boss.
Are you?
Well, sometimes.
No.
Yes.
We're a team.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So then I'll just stop doing social media.
And I'll just stop doing the research for the Q&A.
Man, our fans are going to hate us.
We are a team. Okay, Leviticus 25. We already read and they had some things to say about the Jubilee. Do you remember what the Jubilee is?
Yeah, so, like, I think we kind of had some, like, let's just clear it up, because I think we had some misconceptions about it when we were reading through it, and then, like, until we got to the end, we didn't really know what it was. But the Jubilee, like, so it's crop rotation, essentially, and then every 7 years, you let the ground recover, and then every 49 years, then you have the Jubilee, which is you have 2 years of fallow ground in a row.
Yeah.
And then if you're a slave, but you own the land before, you get to not be a slave anymore. And if you sold the land, you get to go back to the land. And a bunch of bullshit.
You're saying it all wiggy, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
So, there were some reasons that they let the land go fallow every 7 years. For one thing, it was good land management.
Right.
Because, crop rotation, which we mentioned at the time.
Yeah.
Which you just mentioned again.
Right.
But also it was to show their faith in God, that the land belonged to Him, and that they were obeying that God guy.
Yeah.
They were obeying his law and just doing this on faith, blind faith, that hope shit's going to work out.
Well, I don't know if you read further, but I also read some information about this, and it said that people were trying to do this. They tried to cheat it also.
They did, and they still do.
They do crop rotation on different sections of their land, so that way they never have an empty harvest.
Yeah, so they don't do it on faith.
Because apparently that 6th year was not as bountiful as God promised.
Well, is it not bountiful because they never trusted Him in the first place?
But God doesn't exist, so...
No, I'm saying in canon, in this universe where God supposedly exists, in this book that we are reading.
That's a good point. Like you should, if there's a Jewish farmer out there that's like not following this, we should be like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
You're
don't
supposed
trust
to have
your
faith.
God? Yeah. It's the same way that they try to find other cheaty ways to get around their rules.
Or really even a Christian farmer, because they not all of them, but a lot of them say the whole thing. We do the whole thing.
We do the whole book by the word. By the book. By the word. And they don't. Because they don't really have faith. If they had faith, they would let the entire land go fallow.
You know how I know they don't do it?
How?
By the clothes they wear.
True. And also by their Mary Kay makeup and their did nails and hair.
Right. I was leaning more towards that sin that was like the mixed threads.
Oh, yeah, the mixed threads.
Yeah.
That one.
The Mary Kay and the makeup and then whatever, that's just crappy.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah, okay. Well, here's another reason that was presented as a third reason why they might have done it.
Okay.
And in addition to having faith, supposedly, pretending again that stop reading over my shoulder.
I wasn't. I was just staring off into space.
No, you were looking at my phone.
Whatever.
You were looking at the words on my phone.
Continue.
You continue. What did it say?
I don't know. I wasn't reading it.
Okay, well, stop looking at my phone then.
I wasn't. I was staring into space because I was blanking out.
Okay, well, it looked like you were looking at my phone, and I don't like that because it's my words that I took, my notes.
Our fans don't give a shit, so let's go.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you are a fart. So anyway, another third potential reason for them letting the ground go fallow and fallow on that 7th year was to learn compassion, because the poor had to live this way all the time.
Right.
Whereas they only had to go without for that one year.
Wouldn't that be nice if we had something like that in the United States?
It
where,
would.
Where the rich had to live like the poor for a year?
That's really funny, because my very next paragraph, I wonder if you read it.
No, I did not.
Oh, well then you're just that good.
Apparently.
My very next paragraph says, today, some of the principles of the year of Jubilee would be a blessing for modern society, such as a system of the cancellation of debts every 50 years.
Right, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. However, since God did not assign land for modern people across the globe as he did for Israel in the Bible, we can't take every principle of a Jubilee and apply it to the modern world. Womp womp.
I think that's a little bit of bullshit there.
I think we could if we figured out a way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a religious principle in the Bible.
Yeah.
We could make a way to make that apply to other lands that God did not specifically call out in the Bible, because they like to say that America is like God's land.
God's land, even though
it's never mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah.
So how can we be God's land and not follow God's word?
Yeah, true.
Doesn't make sense.
True. That's actually something else that I read, which is that This story could have unfolded anywhere on the globe because it all belongs to God, but he chose Israel as the place for the story to unfold as his stage of his special land. Yeah. So it's all his, but this is real his.
Right. Except for that the reason it fell in that area on that special land is because that's where the fuckers lived that wrote the goddamn Bible.
They hadn't really discovered the other parts yet.
I mean, they hadn't discovered all the other parts.
Yeah.
They knew there was other parts, but they wanted to be special.
Yeah.
And this is their God, damn it.
Sure. God damn it. One could say that the promised land never truly belonged to Israel. It belonged to God.
It's true.
It's true.
They said that. He was a fucking landlord.
He was the landlord. In this, God reminded Israel that their real home was in heaven with him, and they were only strangers and visitors, sojourners to this earth. And this is true of Christians today, that they are merely passing through, that the land belongs to God and not to man, blah, blah, blah. And yet we are charged to take care of it, and we don't.
Right.
The land is on fire because we don't take care of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the whole thing pisses me off.
Well, I don't mind them. You know, if Christians actually lived as Christians should, then great. It would be beautiful and harmonious because we would recognize the land as the beautiful thing that it is and say this land doesn't belong to us. Therefore, we should take care of it as belonging to somebody, not only not us, but somebody who is greater and more powerful than us.
Right.
Like, if I borrow a book from you, I don't say, well, this shit ain't mine, and tear the pages out.
Oh, and honestly, I think that's more...
I was done, but thanks a lot for that.
I'm sorry.
A-hole. You're always cutting me off. I was saying, if I get a book and I borrow it from you, I don't just say, well, this book isn't mine, and tear the pages out. I say, this book belongs to somebody that I care about, that I borrowed it from. And even further, if it belongs to somebody that not just that I care about, but that, like, I grant great authority and power to, that supposedly I'm fucking scared to death of, I'm really going to take good care of it, I would think.
Right. Definitely.
So, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I wasn't sure if you're going to bite my head off this time, so...
Well, don't cut me off.
Okay. So, I think that we used to be a little bit, like, Christians used to be a little bit more attentive to Earth in general, and, like, there was a lot of things about leaving things the way you found them, and being, you know, there's been corporate America that's promoted this idea of taking Earth for everything it's worth because there's nothing in this world that's better than the afterlife, and they're pushing it because they're taking everything today. And they want to take everything now,
and they want to be able to justify it.
Yeah, and they pretty much have sold this idea to the right.
Yeah.
Which is just unbelievable.
God gave this to me, it's mine, so I can have it, and I can do whatever the fuck I want, even if that means tear it up.
Yeah.
Like, in what part of the Bible are you getting that message?
Well, and some of them, I think, even want to, like, burn it all down because that means apocalypse, and if there's apocalypse, that means they get to go to
heaven much sooner.
et cetera, whatever the fuck a deal
And I'm like, there's a cliff right over there. Why don't you go ahead and take a fucking running leap?
No, they can't kill themselves, and that automatically takes them out of heaven.
You go stand there, I'll shove you. Yeah. Yeah, that way you get to die, I'm going to hell, everything's great.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. It's all perfect. So, here's a little note about slavery I found interesting. Because remember, that was another question we had, was what's the deal with slavery and versus servants?
Yeah.
Well, the thing about slavery in the Bible was that it was supposed to be a volunteer situation that you put yourself into. It wasn't supposed to be kidnapping from other lands, which is specifically, explicitly stated as unacceptable.
That doesn't sound like what we read, though.
No, it doesn't.
Because they were specifically saying that they could have slaves and children from other lands to be their property.
Yeah, and that they would be passed down.
That does not sound like what we read.
No, it doesn't. I found it interesting that somebody was trying to justify slavery as a volunteer situation. Researchers were trying to justify this.
Christian researchers.
Yeah.
Let's be clear here, because they're the ones that want to make this sound better.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that have made it a little bit, you know, cleaner in the way it sounds.
But they did point out, though, that in Exodus that it is explicitly stated that kidnapping of people to sell as slaves is prohibited, and to not do that. And that is not what God wants for you.
Right, but that doesn't mean that somebody in another land can't kidnap somebody and then sell that person to you. You didn't do the kidnapping.
Right.
So therefore, you can still have slaves, and they did. Because it specifically says it in Leviticus 25.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I just found it interesting that they were trying to clean it up a bit.
Yeah, who wants to be responsible for saying that the Bible has slaves in it?
Right.
That automatically makes it a shitty book.
Not worthy of the paper that it's printed on.
Right. Yeah. You can't very well stand up in church and say, this is the greatest God, and he loved slavery back then for people that weren't his.
Right. Well, the fact of the matter is that it was written as a way of keeping slavery.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was definitely that. That was a large part. I mean, I've heard that over and over and over again. It was a selling point to justify slavery in early Roman times.
Yeah, yeah. Among many other things, such as, keeping women subjugated.
Right. Yeah,
and
I mean,
men love sex and men love slaves.
This was like the MAGA movement of the first century.
It was the original privileged white male.
Right.
Let's be honest. Yeah. It was normal in the ancient world for someone in life-threatening poverty or unable to pay their debts to become a slave. Duh, they fell on hard times, so they sold themselves into slavery.
Right.
The law of Moses would not allow an Israelite to do this for one of his brethren. He was not to be regarded as a slave, but as a hired servant and a sojourner. So he's still
small distinctions, but
an indentured servant, not a slave.
Right.
Although it is almost impossible for us to relate to in the modern world, this kind of slavery was necessary and helpful in the ancient world. For most of humanity's history, the poorest people were sometimes confronted with a choice between death by starvation or becoming a slave. In such circumstances, it is hard to call slavery good, but it was certainly preferred to the alternative, death.
Right.
Exodus specifically says that kidnapping a man to sell him was a sin and not allowed in Israel, which I said.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a subtle yet important difference between slavery as it was and is commonly practiced and slavery as regulated in the Bible.
And per the people that you were getting this research from.
Right.
But it
depends
literally specifically says in Leviticus that they can own slaves from other lands.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's nothing blocking people from other lands from kidnapping people to put them up as slaves to be sold to the Israelites.
Sure. Absolutely. Most slavery, ancient and modern, was actually a form of kidnapping, the taking and imprisoning of a person against their will, as regulated in the Bible and as practiced in some other ancient cultures. Slavery was received willingly, usually as payment for debt, or in the case of war, was an alternative to death. In ancient Israel, people from other cultures were not kidnapped and enslaved, as was the practice in the African slave trade. Isn't that interesting?
I call bullshit on that.
I call bullshit on that too.
They don't know. They don't know. And that's not what it sounds like.
No, I agree. It sounds like they were trying to go back after the fact and clean it up, which I just found interesting that they were like, no, slavery was good, I promise. They didn't kidnap.
Right,
what?
Right.
Like, no, they actually did, but thanks for trying.
Well, they've also tried to clean up rape and everything else that fucking happens in the Bible, so why would this be any different?
Exactly.
They want to make their God sound like a good God.
Instead of the dick that he is, as written by men in power who wanted to retain power.
Get over it. God's a dick. He fucking sucks, and deal with it. If you want to worship him, you're worshiping an asshole.
Right.
So
the good thing would be to say, you know what? Christianity as written in this Bible was trash.
Yeah.
They had a good basis for a good foundation. Let's write a more just one and start a new Christianity or the new Judaism.
Definitely. Like, why don't you just get rid of the fucking Old Testament?
Yeah.
And, reference it as an archaic thing that led to Christianity. Like, just start new.
Like a rough draft.
And you, only reference the parts that you need from the New Testament and create this whole other religion that doesn't rely on the Old Testament at all, because the Old Testament
is trash.
Is awful.
Yeah.
It's absolutely awful.
Yeah, because if this was true, if this research was true, that no, slavery was actually a boon for the people back then.
Right.
Right. Well, if it is as you say, yes, that would indeed be good. But if God is as awesome as you say he is, then we wouldn't need that anyway.
Right.
Because who wants to sell themselves into slavery even for 6 years before, that 7th year of freedom?
No. It's not every 7 years. It's every 50 years of freedom.
Right.
So
right.
If you lost your fucking, you lost all your money on like year 1 after
that's true.
the thing, you're there for like the next 50 years and you're probably going to die there.
Yeah.
It's only your kids that get born into slavery that get to go back and take it at some point, if anybody reminds them of it, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That is true.
So
yeah, that's some garbage. This 50-year reset, I mean, that in a way it sounds good. A reset of any type sounds good. But if we're doing a reset anyway, couldn't we make it sooner than 50 years?
Yeah, I don't know.
Honestly.
There's just so much wrong with that chapter.
There really is.
And I'm not, like we say it all the time, we're not scholars on the Bible, but it just sounds fucking horrible. And
usually the research that I find makes it make a little more sense, even though it's still horrible. But this research didn't make anything make any sense.
They make it make more sense, but they're literally trying to make it sound better than what it is.
Yeah.
And multiple times now we've called them out on that because it's bullshit the way they're phrasing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't agree with that. And how do you take somebody that is trying to defend Christianity and take them at their word as to how they're defending it? Because they can't defend it the way they want to and still believe in God.
It's true.
Not the way that we want them to.
Not
whatever,
a good
you know
job.
What I'm saying?
Not a good God who is just and kind,
right,
and loving. But a bad God who is the angry, jealous son of a bitch that we've come to know him as. Sure,
right.
That God, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
In which case, don't worry about cleaning it up. He's got this. And on that note, we will see you guys Thursday for the final 2 chapters of Leviticus, chapters 26 and 27.
Awesome. We'll see you guys then.
Yep. Bye.
So that ends this week's Q&A.
If you have questions, answers, or comments, please email them to us by next Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern, to be included in next Tuesday's Q&A episode.
Awesome. See ya.
Bye.